The city buzzed with the hum of innovation, skyscrapers piercing the sky like the aspirations of those who built them. In this world, where time was money, Richard Gale was both wealthy and powerful, yet he always felt one step behind. Richard was a consultant, but not just any consultant. He specialized in rescuing businesses on the brink of collapse. Despite his success, he had become obsessed with a singular idea. What if he could foresee the future mistakes of his clients? One evening, while scrolling through the latest news on his tablet, an advertisement caught his eye. Chronotag, revolutionize your business with time travel. It was absurd, and yet something about the ad's precision and the name of the company piqued his curiosity. He chuckled at the idea, dismissing it as a joke, but the thought lingered in his mind long after he had put the tablet away. The next morning, he found himself dialing the number from the ad, half expecting a deadline. A soft, female voice answered, "Chronotag, how may I assist you?" The professionalism and confidence in her tone convinced him that this was no prank. Richard hesitated, then said, "I'm interested in your time travel services." The voice on the other end didn't waver, as she replied, "We'd be happy to arrange a consultation. How about tomorrow at noon?" The next day, Richard found himself standing before a sleek, modern building nestled between two nondescript office complexes. Chronotech's logo, a stylized infinity symbol, was the only clue that he was in the right place. He entered the building, greeted by the same voice that had answered his call, now belonging to a woman in her mid-30s with a calm and composed demeanor. "Mr. Gale, welcome to Chronotech," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Dr. Evelyn Ward, the lead scientist here." As they walked through the pristine corridors, Evelyn explained the basics of their operation. Time travel, as we know it, is not about physically moving a person through time. It's about sending your consciousness to a specific point in the past or future, allowing you to observe and gather information. Richard was skeptical but intrigued. "And how accurate is this observation?" he asked. Evelyn smiled, a hint of pride in her eyes. "It's accurate enough to save companies billions of dollars and give them an edge over their competitors." They entered a room filled with sleek, minimalist chairs and large screens displaying data in real time. "This is where the magic happens," Evelyn said, motioning for Richard to take a seat. Once seated, Richard felt a slight pressure on his temples as Evelyn placed a small, silver device on his head. "Relax and focus on a time in the near future," she instructed, her voice soft yet authoritative. Richard closed his eyes, imagining his next major business pitch scheduled for a month from now. He felt a strange sensation, as if he were both floating and anchored at the same time. Suddenly, he was standing in the boardroom of his future self, watching as the pitch unfolded. To his horror, he saw the deal fall apart over a small, overlooked detail, a detail he had initially dismissed as insignificant. He snapped back to the present, gasping for breath as he tore the device from his head. Evelyn watched him calmly, waiting for him to compose himself. "What did you see?" she asked, her tone neutral. Richard recounted the vision, his mind racing as he processed the implications. Evelyn nodded thoughtfully. "You can change it," she said simply. "That's the beauty of what we offer." The next few weeks were a blur of preparation and strategy as Richard worked tirelessly to correct the mistake he had foreseen. He adjusted his pitch, anticipating every possible flaw and counterargument. When the day of the pitch arrived, he was confident but cautious, the memory of his vision still fresh in his mind. The presentation went smoothly, and as he reached the point where his future self had faltered, he delivered the corrected information with precision. The clients nodded approvingly, and the deal was signed without a hitch. Richard's heart raced with triumph as he realized the power he now held, the ability to outmaneuver time itself. Word of his success spread quickly, and soon Richard was inundated with requests from high-profile clients seeking his chrono consulting services. He became the go-to expert for businesses looking to secure their futures, his fees skyrocketing with each new success. But as the months passed, Richard began to notice a troubling pattern. Each time he used Chronotech's services, the visions became darker, the stakes higher. In one vision, he saw a catastrophic market crash that would wipe out his entire portfolio. In another, he witnessed the betrayal of a trusted partner, leading to the downfall of his company. Despite the warnings, Richard couldn't resist the allure of time travel. He continued to rely on Chronotech, his addiction to the power it granted him growing stronger with each use. Evelyn noticed the change in him, the way his once sharp eyes now held a haunted look. "Mr. Gale," she said one day, after yet another session, "time travel is a tool, not a crutch. The more you use it, the more you risk losing yourself in the process." Richard brushed off her concerns, confident in his ability to control his destiny. But deep down, he knew she was right. The visions were taking a toll on him, blurring the line between present and future. One night, after a particularly disturbing vision, Richard found himself standing on the edge of his penthouse balcony, staring down at the city below. The once thriving metropolis now seemed cold and distant, a reflection of the emptiness he felt inside. He had everything he ever wanted: wealth, power, influence, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he had lost something vital along the way, the ability to trust in the natural flow of time, to embrace uncertainty and risk had been replaced by an insatiable need for control. As he stood there, the wind whipping through his hair, Richard realized that he had become a prisoner of his own success. The very tool that had brought him to the top was now threatening to destroy him. In a moment of clarity, he made a decision. He would use Chronotech one last time, not to foresee a future business deal, but to find the point in his life where everything had changed, where he had gone from a man with dreams to a man consumed by fear. The next day, Richard returned to Chronotech, his resolve steely. Evelyn met him at the door, her expression unreadable. "This is the last time," he said, his voice firm. "I need to find the moment when I lost myself." Evelyn nodded, understanding the gravity of his request. She guided him to the familiar chair, attaching the device to his temples with a sense of finality. "Focus on your past," she instructed, her voice soft yet commanding. Richard closed his eyes, concentrating on the timeline of his life, searching for the moment that had set him on this path. The sensation of floating returned, and he found himself standing in his childhood home, watching his younger self struggle with the decision to pursue his dreams or follow a safer, more conventional path. He watched as his younger self chose safety over passion, the first step toward the person he had become. A deep sadness welled up within him as he realized that his need for control had been born out of fear of failure, fear of the unknown. Tears streamed down Richard's face as he observed the pivotal moment when his life had diverged from the path he had once envisioned. He had traded his dreams for security, and in doing so, had lost the very essence of who he was. When the vision ended, Richard removed the device with trembling hands. Evelyn watched him silently, her eyes filled with compassion. "You can still change," she said softly. "It's not too late." Richard nodded, a sense of peace washing over him for the first time in years. He knew what he had to do. The next day, he announced his retirement from consulting, shocking the business world. He sold his shares in his company, donating the majority of his wealth to charities that supported young entrepreneurs. Richard then disappeared from the public eye, choosing a quiet life in a small town where he could reconnect with the dreams he had once abandoned. Years later, Richard was a different man. He no longer needed the rush of power or the certainty of control. He had found contentment in the simple pleasures of life, in the pursuit of passion rather than profit. Though the world would remember him as a brilliant consultant, Richard Gale knew the truth. He was a man who had been given a second chance at life, a chance to rewrite his own story, not by altering time, but by choosing to live fully in the present. And as he watched the sun set over the horizon, Richard smiled, knowing that he had finally found what he had been searching for all along: peace, purpose, and the freedom to embrace the unknown.